At 3 a.m., she walked out, snarling, "Stop acting like you have control here, Max. I'll be back whenever I want." I didn't chase. I didn't text. 3 days later, she came back, straight into the one person she feared most. "Hey, Reddit, figured I'd finally share this story because it's one of those situations where you don't realize how far things have slipped until you're standing there at 3 a.m. watching it unfold in front of you. I'm not the type to make scenes or chase drama, but let's just say when I hit my breaking point, I handled it in a way she never saw coming. You ever wake up in the middle of the night because something just doesn't sound right? Like it's not even loud enough to wake a normal person, but it hits your brain like an alarm? That's what happened to me. It was 3:17 in the morning on a Tuesday, dead quiet, and I, 27 male, heard my smart deadbolt click. Now I live alone. Well, correction, I used to live alone. Rose, my girlfriend, 25 female, had been staying with me for a while, but even then, the sound was off. Too slow, too deliberate, like someone was trying to be sneaky instead of just leaving. I rolled out of bed, no rush, just that calm clarity you get when your body knows it's right. The thing is, Rose and I hadn't been together that long, but the shine had already worn off. At first, it was good. Spontaneous, fun, lots of energy. But once she moved in, little cracks started showing. She'd dodge simple questions about where she was going, spend hours editing photos but never show much work, and snap if I asked about money or bills. Nothing dramatic enough to call out on the spot, but enough small red flags piling up that I started paying closer attention. So I walked down the hall, lights still off, and sure enough, there she was. Rose, fully dressed, jacket, shoes, hair done up, camera bag slung over her shoulder. She looked like she was headed to a client shoot at sunrise, except it was pitch black outside and she hadn't mentioned anything. She froze when she realized I was standing there, and not caught doing something wrong. Froze. More like, ugh, you're in my way. Froze. You know that look? Pure annoyance, like I was inconveniencing her by existing in my own damn apartment at 3 a.m. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Going somewhere? She narrowed her eyes, lips pressed tight for half a second before she snapped back. "Stop acting like you have control here, Max. This isn't your call. I'll be back on my time, not yours." It was that tone. Sharp, defensive, like I was a prison warden asking for her papers. Not a girlfriend talking to her boyfriend who carries the mortgage, groceries, and half the gear she uses for freelance. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't get mad. I just tilted my head and said, "That's cute, Rose. You sound like a teenager sneaking out past curfew. Newsflash. You're 25, not 16. She blinked at me like I'd slapped her. For once, she didn't have some clever comeback loaded up. That's the thing about entitled people. They're great at being loud until someone hits them with plain logic. We just stood there for a few seconds, staring each other down in the dim hallway light. Her eyes were full of that fake defiance she wore like armor. But underneath, she didn't expect me to fire back. Her mouth opened, closed, then opened again. For a moment, I thought she turned into a buffer fish, like she wanted to keep pushing but couldn't find the right angle. Finally, she huffed, spun on her heel, and pulled the door shut behind her. I didn't stop her. Didn't chase. Didn't beg for an explanation. I just stood there, arms crossed, and let the silence settle. The thing you have to understand is that Rose had been pulling stuff like this for a while. Just not this blatant. Late nights, weird excuses, vague stories about meeting friends or scouting locations. She'd come home tired and snappy, sometimes not at all until morning, smelling like she'd been anywhere but work. Every time I asked where she was, she'd turn it into me being controlling. Like asking a simple, "What time are you getting home?" Made me a parole officer. But that night was different. She didn't even bother to fake guilt. "No, sorry, couldn't sleep. No, just grabbing air." Just flat out, "You don't own me." And that right there told me everything I needed to know. I'm not the type to yell or throw things when I'm mad. That's wasted energy. I'm a cybersecurity consultant by trade. My whole life is built on spotting weak points and locking them down before they turn into real problems. And standing there in the hallway, watching the door click shut behind Rose, it clicked in my head the same way a security breach does at work. But I wasn't thinking about consequences or big plans yet. That comes later. In that moment, all I felt was this weird calm, like the part of my brain that usually ignores red flags had finally shut off. It wasn't heartbreak. It wasn't jealousy. It was clarity. I walked to the living room, sat down on the edge of the couch she'd insisted on buying. Ugliest thing I'd ever seen, by the way. Cushions felt like sitting on bread left out too long. And just thought. If you've ever dealt with someone like Rose, you know what I mean. They live off reactions. They poke and prod and argue because they feed on the drama. And the moment you stop playing along, they don't know what to do with themselves. That silence is heavier than any shouting match. So I sat there, staring at the door she'd just walked out of, and I knew things weren't going back to how they were. Whether she came back in 3 hours or 3 days, she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. And for once, I wasn't the one left speechless. She walked out, slammed the door like she was the one making a point, and I just sat there. I didn't pace around. I didn't text her, "Where are you going?" like some desperate guy. I leaned back into that stiff couch and thought, all right, let's see how good you are at covering your tracks. I'd already decided it was over, but if she thought she was clever, I wanted something solid to slap in her face first. Because here's the thing, Rose was careless. Always had been. She treated tech stuff like magic. Wi-Fi connected? Cool. Password saved? Even better. She never thought about the fact that my literal job is poking around networks and finding what doesn't belong. If there's one arena where I had home field advantage, it was this one. So I got up, grabbed my laptop from the desk, and started pulling logs. First stop, the router. Most people don't realize that every time you connect, you're leaving footprints, timestamps, devices, sometimes even the destinations you hit. And Rose? She'd been editing photos on her MacBook late at night, connected to my Wi-Fi. I cross-checked. Midnight sessions, heavy upload spikes. But the kicker wasn't the traffic. It was the locations tied to her files. See, cameras leave little details baked into every shot. EXIF data, GPS tags if you don't turn them off. And Rose? She loved to brag about her urban exploration shoots. So when I dug into the synced folder she left open on the shared iPad, boom. Geotags at places she never told me about. One was a 24-hour diner way across town. Another? A loft space that had a rental listing online for photographer-friendly studio, open late. And wouldn't you know it? The dates lined up perfectly with those nights she came home at 3 a.m. talking about client edits. I wasn't angry. That's the part I can't explain enough. I wasn't sitting there steaming, crying, or whatever. My brain flipped into work mode. This was just another security audit, except the vulnerability wasn't a server or a firewall. It was my girlfriend. Next step, rideshare receipts. She'd used my shared account once before, just this one time, which meant her email was still linked. Sure enough, past trips sat there waiting, one after another. Drop-offs near that same loft. Return rides from the same block hours later. Every single one time-stamped between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. I actually laughed out loud at that point. She really thought she was slick. Rose probably imagined herself as this mysterious, free-spirited artist slipping into the night with her camera bag. In reality, she was a poorly disguised audit trail with lipstick. But I wasn't done, because I knew there'd be more if I looked in the right places. And sure enough, there it was. The cherry on top. Months ago, Rose had asked to borrow the iPad for editing when her laptop charger broke. She set up her accounts on it, never bothered to log out, and hit Trust This Network. That meant message sync. Since she'd signed her Apple ID into messages on the iPad, her threads kept syncing there until I signed her out. And guess what syncs if you're dumb enough to leave it toggled? Everything. So I opened up the messaging app, scrolled a bit, and bam. Chat threads with some guy saved under nothing but Nolan beer. Real creative. I didn't even have to read long to get the picture. Him. Studio again tonight? I'll bring snacks. Her. Can't stay too long, Max has been nosy. Him. Lol, tell him it's editing. He buys that, right? Her. He's too uptight to get it. You're the only one who actually makes me feel alive. I sat there staring at it, shaking my head. Not sad, not shocked, just entertained, honestly. I'd been telling myself for weeks that her excuses didn't add up. Now I had the receipts. Literal, digital, time-stamped receipts. What killed me was how lazy it all was. She didn't even bother deleting the chats. Didn't think twice about logging into things on my devices. Didn't turn off geotags. It was like she forgot she was living with a guy who makes his living off knowing where people click and when. I kept digging, because at that point it was like watching a bad movie. You know how it ends, but you still want to see how dumb the characters get. Screenshots. Dates. File saves. I stacked them neatly into folders on my drive like I was prepping for a client presentation. Not because I planned to confront her yet. Number confrontation is emotional. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. I wanted evidence. Organized, airtight, undeniable. So I kept at it until the sun started coming up. And by the time my coffee machine beeped, I had her entire freelance nightlife mapped out like a case file. where she went, who she was with, how many times, and every excuse she'd thrown at me over the last 2 months. Debunked with a couple clicks. I closed the laptop, sipped my coffee, and actually smiled. Because for the first time in a while, I wasn't doubting myself. I wasn't second-guessing whether I was paranoid or overthinking. The data was clean. No emotion. Just raw, verifiable proof. And here's the part that would have driven Rose crazy if she'd known. I didn't text her. Didn't call. Didn't even mention it when she eventually came back. I went about my day like normal, while her digital trail sat neatly cataloged in a folder on my desktop called Rose Audit. And that's when it hit me. She thought she was sneaky, but she wasn't even playing the same game I was. She was still in that high school mindset where sneaking out with a bag and a smirk was some kind of rebellious win. Me? I was already drawing up a response plan. That's the difference between people like Rose and people like me. She lived in impulses. I lived in systems. First step was obvious. Physical access. If you can't control who comes and goes, you don't control anything. I killed her unit code on my smart lock and asked the doorman to deactivate her building fob. They did it in minutes. Then I rotated my own master code for good measure. 2 minutes of typing and 1 quick call, and she was effectively a guest. If she came back, she'd be standing outside like every other stranger, wondering why the door didn't beep anymore. Next, the digital side. Shared accounts were low-hanging fruit. Streaming logins, joint app subscriptions. Not just changing passwords, but revoking devices so she'd get the "you've been signed out" message in real time. Petty? Maybe. Necessary? Absolutely. While I was in cleanup mode, I scanned through the bills in my name. Sure enough, she'd quietly added a secondary card to one of my delivery apps and had been ordering little extras when I wasn't looking. Nothing massive, but enough to be insulting. That was gone within seconds. I froze the card, removed her profile from the app, and disputed the charges as unauthorized since she added herself without permission. She'd get the notification eventually, and I'll admit, I smiled thinking about her face when it popped up. By the time I leaned back in my chair, the apartment was mine again. No access, no passwords, no hidden doors. For her, it was going to feel like someone had flipped the power switch on her entire lifestyle. But the real move wasn't about doors or accounts. It was about leverage. Rose didn't fear losing me. She feared accountability. And there was one person alive who embodied accountability in her world. Her dad, Chief Hecox. Now, I've only met the man once. Christmas. The kind of guy who walks into a room and everyone straightens their back without thinking. He barely said 5 words to me at the time, but it was enough. He had that presence. Strict, watchful, zero tolerance for nonsense. Rose always painted him like some overbearing villain, but the irony was she still let him pay for things. Car insurance, phone bill, little lifelines she didn't advertise while bragging about being independent. So I scrolled through my contacts, found the number from that holiday dinner, and stared at it for a second. It was late, but I knew cops don't exactly keep 9-to-5 schedules. The guy had probably been awake since dawn anyway. I hit call. He answered on the second ring, voice sharp and clipped like he was already halfway into business. Hecox. Chief, I said, calm, steady. This is Max. Sorry for the late call. I wouldn't be reaching out if it wasn't necessary. There was a pause on his end, like he was flipping through mental files trying to place me. Then a short grunt. Rose's boyfriend. Not anymore, I corrected. That ended about 3 hours ago. And you need to know why. I laid it out like evidence. No drama, no ranting, just facts. The sneaking out, the geotags, the ride shares, the messages with Nolan. I didn't embellish. I didn't speculate. I just lined it up, timestamp by timestamp. The line stayed quiet. All I could hear was his breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. When he finally spoke, his voice had that weight of someone who'd seen this pattern before. She's been pulling this disappearing act her whole life, he said flatly. Always with excuses. Always running when it gets hard. I figured as much, I replied. But my place isn't her crash pad anymore. I've cut her access. She's locked out. You're her next stop whether she wants it or not. On another long silence then, what exactly are you proposing, Max? I'll pack her things. You fly out here. You take her home. She can't spin her way out of you. She can argue with me all night, but you? You're the one person she won't be able to gaslight. He didn't answer right away. I could picture him pinching the bridge of his nose, weighing it. Finally, he said, when do you expect her back? 2 or 3 days, I said. She always times her returns when she runs out of money or patience. If you're here before then, she walks straight into both of us. No hesitation this time. I'll be on the first flight tomorrow. And just like that, the call ended. I set the phone down and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. It wasn't relief. It wasn't victory. It was satisfaction. Everything was locked down, secure. Rose thought she was out living her little secret life. What she didn't know was that she was already boxed in, and the one person she'd been running from was en route to collect her. For me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about order. And right then, my apartment felt more orderly than it had in months. By the time Chief Heacock showed up the next morning, I'd already slept like a rock. Funny how clarity can do that for you. And there he was. Same squared shoulders. Same stare that could cut drywall in half. Even out of uniform, he carried himself like a man who'd spent his whole life commanding respect. We shook hands. Firm, no nonsense. He didn't waste words on small talk. His eyes swept the apartment once, sharp and fast, then landed back on me. You said you had evidence. I nodded and slid my laptop across the table. I didn't need to narrate. The folders spoke for themselves. Geotags, rideshare logs, message screenshots. I'd labeled everything with dates and times like I was prepping for trial. He clicked through a few files, jaw tightening as he read. No reaction beyond that. No rant about betrayal. No hand-wringing. Just a man cataloging facts. When he finally looked up, his voice was flat. We'll pack her things. She won't be back here. That was it. No drawn-out speech, just a call made and executed. And for the next few hours, we moved like a team. It was strange, I won't lie. Packing someone's life into boxes while their father methodically tapes them shut. Rose had scattered herself through my apartment like confetti, clothes crammed into drawers, half-finished photography projects littering the coffee table, notebooks filled with ideas she never actually pursued. Heacox didn't treat any of it like fragile memories. He handled it the way you'd handle junk evidence. Efficient. Brutal. Quick pause, fellas. YouTube just dropped this new hype feature. If you're hooked on this story, smash that hype button. It tells YouTube this video deserves to blow up, and it keeps even crazier stories coming your way. Thanks so much for your support. All right, back to the drama. He opened a shoebox at one point and found a stack of credit card bills. All maxed, all hidden. He didn't say anything, just shoved them back in and sealed the box. Then he found a binder, stuffed with client contracts. Deadlines missed, invoices unpaid. Freelance, she called it. Looked more like unpaid overtime for everyone else. Patterns the same as when she was a teenager, he muttered once, half to himself. Take responsibility until it gets inconvenient. Then run. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. The man was connecting his own dots. By the third hour, the living room was lined with neat stacks of cardboard. I'd never seen Rose's chaos look so contained. There was something almost therapeutic about it, like sealing off pieces of a mess I'd let bleed into my life for too long. But I wasn't interested in just boxing her stuff. I wanted her to walk back into something she couldn't argue her way out of. So I left one thing out. Her laptop. She'd left the laptop open, like always. No lock screen, no password prompt. So I set it dead center on the coffee table, screen glowing, a single folder sitting on the desktop in bold letters. Reality. Inside, I'd organized everything into subfolders by date. Screenshots of her chats with Nolan, Uber receipts, photo geotags. Nothing dramatic, no commentary, no long paragraphs from me. Just her own digital trail laid bare, each piece contradicting whatever excuse she might try to throw out. And right at the top, a plain text file named readme.txt. One line inside, your story versus the data. I wasn't doing it to humiliate her. I was doing it so the next time she tried to spin some tale, she'd have to scroll past her own evidence first. When Heacock saw it, he raised one eyebrow. Cold, he said. That was it. And coming from him, I took it as a compliment. We finished up around mid-afternoon. I told the doorman not to allow her up without my explicit say-so. He nodded, clearly amused. I guess even staff had noticed Rose's revolving door routine and weren't shocked. The trap was simple. When she came back, she'd hit a wall. Fob dead. Code useless. Doorman refusing her entry. No calls answered from me. The only way up would be when I allowed it. And when she finally walked in, she wouldn't find me alone. She'd find her father sitting there, boxes taped, laptop glowing, ready to hand her life back with zero wiggle room. There was a kind of calm in the apartment once it was all set. No clutter, no noise. Just boxes, silence, and the weight of inevitability. Heacox finally stood, brushed his hands together like he was dusting off a crime scene, and looked at me. She's not going to like this. I almost laughed. She doesn't have to like it. She just has to face it. He gave a rare smirk. You remind me of a rookie detective I had once. Never raised his voice, Never got rattled. Just built airtight cases until people cornered themselves. I shrugged. Systems don't lie. People do. We both sat down for a minute, sipping water like we'd just finished moving furniture instead of dismantling a person's safety net. And for the first time since Rose had moved in, I didn't feel like a guest in my own place. I felt like the owner again. By the time the sun set, everything was ready. Every box stacked, every account cut, every entry blocked. The laptop sat like bait, the folder waiting. The apartment was clean, orderly, and silent. Now, all that was left was waiting for Rose to walk straight into the trap. It didn't take long. 3 days later, like clockwork, my phone pinged with a system alert. Attempted access denied. She always ran on fumes for about 72 hours before circling back. Her fob had failed at the front door. Then again. A minute later, she tried her code. Same result. I leaned over the laptop and pulled up the log. Clear as day. Her fob ID popped up in the log, the one the front desk had labeled under her name. Multiple failed entries in a row. It almost made me laugh. She probably thought the system glitched because she kept hammering the keypad like it would magically change its mind. 5 minutes later, the doorman called. Hey Max, Rose is down here. Says there's a mistake. She's pretty upset. No mistake, I said. She's no longer on the resident list. Keep her downstairs until I give you the word. Got it, he replied. And from the sound in his voice, I could tell he was enjoying this more than he should. Then came the texts. Rose, my fob's broken. Fix it. Rose, Max, this isn't funny. Rose, open the damn door. I'm not playing. A few minutes later, Rose, please just let me up so we can talk. Decline. Across from me on the couch, Chief Heacock sat with his arms folded, silent, eyes fixed on the door like he'd been waiting for this moment for years. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough. Finally, I gave the nod. Buzz her up. The elevator dinged. Her footsteps hit the hallway. Fast, angry. She knocked once and I'd already unlatched the door. She shoved it open like she owned the place. Same attitude as always, entitled, chest out, zero shame. And then she saw him. Her dad, standing dead center in the room. Not yelling, not even blinking. Just there. Broad stance, arms crossed, eyes locked on her. The blood drained right out of her face. Dad, her voice cracked. What are you doing here? You tell me, he said, calm but sharp. Because Max already did. Her head snapped toward me, fire in her eyes. Seriously, Max? You called my dad? Are you kidding me? I didn't move. I just reached over and spun the laptop around on the coffee table. The folder labeled Reality sat open. A couple clicks and there it was. Screenshots of her chats with Nolan, geotagged photos of late-night shoots that weren't shoots, Uber receipts with times and addresses that lined up too perfectly. Her face went blank, like she'd just been unplugged. I leaned back, calm as ever. Funny thing about tech, Rose. You can delete excuses. You can't delete GPS. She blinked, mouth open, but no words came out. For once, she had nothing loaded up. No spin, no gaslighting, no little speech about how I was controlling. Her eyes shot to her dad, desperate. This isn't what it looks like. He's twisting it. Twisting what? Heacox barked. He stepped closer, and his voice hardened like steel. Twisting the receipts with your name on them? Twisting your own words in those messages? You think I'm an idiot, Roses? Her lip trembled. Dad, please. No. Don't Dad, please me, he snapped, cutting her down mid-sentence. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is? To get a call from another man, telling me my own daughter has been sneaking around like some teenager? You humiliated him, and you humiliated me. Her face twisted, half shock, half panic. I didn't. You did, he thundered, voice rising just enough to shake her. You walk around calling yourself independent, free-spirited, whatever label you like this week. But who's been paying your phone bill? Who's been covering your car insurance? Who's been cleaning up your messes since you were old enough to know better? Me. And what do you do with that? You sneak, you lie, and you drag my name into your recklessness. Her eyes filled with tears. She opened her mouth to argue again, but he pointed straight at the laptop screen. Those are your words, Rose. Not his, not mine, yours. You chose them, and now you're going to own them. She shrank back, shoulders curling in like she was trying to disappear. The arrogance, the fire, it drained out of her with every word he threw down. I pointed to the boxes stacked neatly by the wall. Everything you left here is packed. You've got the guest room for one night. Tomorrow morning, you're on a plane home with your dad. She turned to me, desperate again. Max, please, you can't do this. This is my home too. It's my name on the deed, I said flatly. Your access ended the second you told me. I'll be back when I feel like it. Remember that? Congratulations, you made it permanent. That one hit her hard. She winced like she'd been slapped. Her dad pressed in closer, voice quieter now but sharper. You think I enjoy this? You think I want to fly across the country to drag my grown daughter back home like a runaway kid? You embarrassed me, Rose. You embarrassed yourself. You took advantage of the only person here who gave a damn about you, and you expected him to roll over. Not anymore. Her knees wobbled. She sat down hard on the couch, head in her hands. She tried softer this time, voice breaking. I made mistakes. Can't we just reset, can't we? No, I cut in. You had months of resets. I'm not running in circles with you. Chief Hecox grabbed one of the boxes, carried it to the door, and set it down with a heavy thud. Pack it in. You're done here. Tonight you stay put. Tomorrow you're on a flight. That's the end of it. The silence after that was brutal. She didn't look at me. She didn't look at him. She just stared at the floor, shoulders slumped, completely stripped of the arrogance she'd walked in with. For once, Rose wasn't the loudest voice. For once, she wasn't in control. She was cornered, exposed, and humiliated. And honestly, watching her dad spell it out louder than I ever could, that was the kind of closure I didn't even know I needed. The next morning, Chief Hecox didn't waste time. He had her up before sunrise, dragging her suitcase and boxes toward the door, while she moped around like a kid grounded on prom night. She barely looked at me as she left. No apology, no explanation, just that same sour, defiant look she always wore when she realized she wasn't in control. When the door closed behind them, the apartment went silent. And not the tense kind of silence. It was clean, breathable, like hitting a reset button. I didn't hear from her directly again, but Hecox gave me a short call a couple days later. Straight to the point, as usual. She's home, he said. Curfew's in place. Household duties are non-negotiable. 30 days to find full-time work. Already got her an interview at a small ad agency. She hates it, which means it's working. I just told him, good. She needed it. And that was the end of the call. Meanwhile, Rose wasn't done. Instead of keeping her head down, she tried to flip the script. She started running her mouth to anyone who'd listen. According to her, I was some obsessive control freak who used his profession to stalk her. She claimed I monitored her every move like she was a suspect. She said I was paranoid, possessive, and had locked her out of the apartment just to assert control. Apparently, she even told a couple people I planted the evidence. That's how desperate she got, pretending the data from her own phone and her own accounts was somehow fabricated by me. I heard all of this secondhand at first, but then one afternoon I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Turned out to be Sarah, one of her friends I'd met a few times. Out of all of them, she was the only one who seemed to have her life together. She didn't waste time. Max, I just need to tell you. I know what Rose is saying about you, and it's not sticking. Not sticking? I asked, leaning back in my chair. Yeah, she's telling everyone you're controlling and basically hacked her life. But we all know she was cheating. We told her straight up she was playing with fire. She didn't listen. I stayed quiet, letting her keep talking. She tried to paint you as this stalker because of your job. But the thing is, she's always been messy with her devices. Everyone knows it. She'd leave her laptop open, phone unlocked, talk about Bart like it was no big deal. She's the one who humiliated herself. Honestly, what you did, locking her out, calling her dad, that might have been the best thing for her. I couldn't help but smirk. Not because I needed validation, but because it was satisfying hearing her own friends shut her down. Rose wanted sympathy and backup. Instead, she got eye rolls. Sarah ended the call with a quiet, "Sorry you had to deal with her." None of us were surprised. Then she hung up. That was it for the smear campaign. Rose's big plan to flip the narrative died before it even got off the ground. No one bought her story. No one wanted to co-sign her drama. Even her rebound guy, the bartender, bailed after a couple weeks. I heard from the grapevine he stopped answering her messages the second she moved back in with her dad. While she was busy trying to convince people I was the villain, I was busy doing something better. Cleaning house. Literally. The first thing to go was that hideous couch she insisted on buying. I sold it online within 48 hours and replaced it with a proper leather one. Every trace of her clutter, her art supplies scattered across the dining table, her random photography props jammed into closets, gone. I deep cleaned the whole place until it looked the way it did before she ever moved in. And man, the difference was insane. No more walking into piles of laundry that weren't mine. No more sticky coffee mugs abandoned on the counter. No more sighs and eye rolls whenever I asked her to handle basic responsibilities. The apartment felt like mine again. On top of that, work was picking up. I landed a huge new client in cybersecurity, a corporate contract that was going to keep me busy for months. My schedule was full, my apartment was quiet, and my head was clear. Every day without her was like peeling off another layer of stress I didn't realize I'd been carrying. And the best part? Knowing she was stuck back home, with her dad watching her like a hawk. No late nights, no running off to some dive with her camera bag as cover. Just curfews, chores, and a 9-to-5 job she despised. She wanted freedom, but what she got was accountability. Her smear campaign fizzled out. Her friends didn't buy it. Her fling ditched her, and her dad had her under his thumb. Meanwhile, I had order, stability, and a clean slate. Weeks turned into months, and honestly, life got better in ways I didn't even expect. Work was booming. I had more clients than I could handle, and instead of stressing, I thrived in it. My apartment stayed spotless. Every bill was paid on time without excuses. I didn't have to chase anyone down for next week, I swear. It was just me, my routines, and my space exactly how I wanted it. But Rose wasn't gone completely. She tried to claw her way back in. It happened about a month after she'd been dragged home. I was checking my email one morning and noticed one buried in my junk folder. Long subject line. Please just read this. I've changed. I hovered over it for a second, debating if I should even bother. Curiosity won. I clicked. It was pages long, like she'd sat up all night trying to rewrite her life story. She started with the usual lines. How she didn't know how good she had it. How she was scared of commitment. How her behavior was because of her upbringing. Not once did she just say, I lied. I cheated. I treated you like garbage. It was all blame shifting dressed up as self-reflection. Halfway through, she tried playing the sympathy card. Said working a 9-to-5 was soul-crushing, that her dad's rules were prison, and that she finally realized how stable I had made her life. She called me her rock. Said I grounded her in ways no one else ever could. And then, I've grown now, Max. I'm different. Can we just talk? I didn't reply. Didn't even type out a draft. I closed the email, dragged it to the trash, and hit delete. Gone in 2 clicks. Because here's the truth. People don't magically change when they're forced into a corner. They change when they look at themselves and own the fact that they put themselves there. Rose wasn't doing that. She was just looking for an escape hatch. The only thing that email confirmed for me was that I made the right call. Word trickled back to me through mutual acquaintances. Rose was miserable. She did land a job, junior designer at some small agency. Entry-level pay, long hours, a boss who didn't coddle her. To her, it was basically purgatory. She had to commute, follow deadlines, and actually answer to someone. For the first time in her adult life, there was no safety net. No guy to sponge off, no dad writing checks without questions. She hated it. Her resentment toward her dad grew daily, but Chief Hecox didn't care. He was done being the easy out. He enforced his rules like he was running a precinct. And Rose, the so-called free spirit, was grounded harder than she ever had been. Friends told me she stopped talking about me after a while. Not because she got over it, but because every time she tried, people reminded her she brought it on herself. Even the ones who usually cheered her chaos got tired of the routine. And the bartender? Long gone. Probably moved on to another girl who bought his I'm different routine. The thing I realized through all this was simple. Rose thought her power came from being defiant, from leaving and coming back whenever she wanted. She thought she could walk in and out of my life like it was a hotel lobby. But real power isn't in chaos. It's in stability, in self-sufficiency, in being able to cut someone off without raising your voice, because you know you don't need them. I didn't need to scream, didn't need to argue, didn't need to prove I was right. All I had to do was lock her out, call her dad, and let reality handle the rest. She lost everything she thought made her free, and I got everything back that made me sane. Her last desperate act was trying to tell people I ruined her life. But the truth? I didn't ruin her life. I just stopped letting her ruin mine. She said I didn't own her, and she was right, but she never owned me either. And the second she forgot that, the game was over.